One of Francesca's friends was getting married. Problem was, she wasn't a virgin. Francesca was a nurse from the United States, but Aya was from Egypt. I don't know much about Egyptian culture, but Francesca said Aya's life was in danger if the groom found out she wasn't a virgin. So, she gave her a drug to make her spot on her wedding night. It did the trick. The groom was none the wiser, and the bride was safe. She applied her medical knowledge again to help another female friend, where thankfully the stakes were much lower. Natalia was from Eastern Europe, and currently dating 2 men. One of them gave her a hickey. She had a date with her other lover that same afternoon, and didn't want to upset him or lose him. No amount of makeup would cover it up, so Francesca took a hypodermic needle and made long scratches on Natalia's neck to make it look like she scratched herself. It worked. She and her lover had a normal, intimate afternoon. I wonder which man she'd eventually choose, if she decided to choose one at all. I also thought to myself, while both scenarios involved deceiving a man, the potential consequences for each woman were significantly different. It was a beautiful Saturday in Mexico City, and I was having lunch with some friends and meeting new people as always. I ordered tlacoyos, which are thick, oval-shaped blue corn masa patties filled with beans or meat and grilled to perfection. Everyone at the table ordered carajillos, which was a cocktail made of espresso and a Spanish liqueur. I don't drink alcohol, so I had agua de Jamaica, a refreshing drink made from dried hibiscus flowers. I started talking to Ivana, a beautiful 24-year-old Ukrainian woman working remotely as a user experience designer. She lived with her younger brother, who was only 16 and had his own tech company. Both had Mexican residency and didn't plan on returning to the Ukraine anytime soon, since their hometown was destroyed. Ivana had been dating an American man for the past year. They met at a salsa dance social here in Mexico City, which I recommend if you're in town and would like to meet new people or kindle the spark of romance the natural way. I asked if there was a big difference between dating an American man and an Eastern European man. Ivana replied, "American men appreciate it when you cook for them or take care of domestic chores. Eastern European men expect you to do it and take it for granted." Sitting across from us was Manuel, a Colombian man who said he once dated a Russian girl. She was only 20 years old and wanted to be pregnant when she was 21. Once he came out of the bathroom and saw her going through his phone, no doubt, checking to see if he was talking to other girls. This was nothing new to him, because the Colombian girls he's dated before did the exact same thing. He looked her in the eye and said he valued their relationship, and he'd never do anything to jeopardize it. She never went through his phone again. Unfortunately, they broke up anyways because he wasn't ready to be a father so soon. I wondered to myself, is going through your partner's phone normal these days? Because I've never done it, and don't plan on doing it. We finished our food, and for dessert I ordered pastel de elote, which was a sweet corn cake, and began talking to Charlotte, a young American woman from Chicago working remotely as a travel agent. She recently moved into a new apartment and was in the process of buying furniture. There was a local man selling plants on the corner near her place. She suspected he had a crush on her because every time she walked by, he'd give her a new plant, free of charge. Her living room was turning into a greenhouse. One time, he gave her a 7-foot-tall cactus. We wondered if this was a metaphor for something. The next evening, I went to a party and chatted with a South African man who just finished a road trip through Mexico, visiting every state. He didn't speak Spanish, but he traveled with 2 Mexican friends. He assumed, since he was black, that he'd blend in. Maybe he could pass for Latin American. But no. Locals took one look at him and knew he was a complete foreigner. His name was Junior. He grew up in South Korea and spoke fluent Korean. His mother was a diplomat, and they moved around often when he was a child. He said he was her luggage, which led me to believe he didn't enjoy being a jet setter at such a young age. He also said he knew next to nothing about South African culture. On the inside, he was Korean through and through. Junior told me about a terrifying incident he and his friends experienced early one morning during their road trip. They spent the night in a charming, small town and left at 6 a.m. to beat the traffic. 30 minutes later, they came across a truck blocking the road where there was no traffic light. 2 men stepped out of the car and began dumping dead bodies onto the ground. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dead bodies. The men didn't even look at the car behind them. They finished their gruesome task with no emotion, got back into the car, and drove off. Junior and his friends let 20 minutes pass before starting the car again, wanting to put some distance between them. Before this road trip, he assessed the risks of traveling through Mexico. A car accident, getting mugged, maybe a drunken bar fight. But never did he think they'd come across the frightening scene that morning. He said, "That's the thing about adventure. If you're too adventurous, you might put an end to future adventures." And I'd have to agree. Junior recently went to Tepito, one of Mexico City's most dangerous neighborhoods. Beforehand, his friend told him to leave his smartwatch at home and don't bring too much cash, just in case. They took the bus, and as they pulled into the neighborhood, 2 young men got on and made an announcement. They had a bag of candy, which they said they just stole from a shop, and they'd like to sell this candy to the bus passengers so they wouldn't have to rob them. And with that, everyone on the bus bought a piece of candy, and the 2 young men got off at the next stop. Junior and his friends went to Lagunilla, one of the city's largest markets, dating back to the colonial era. You can find anything from antiques to clothing to food. There's even a stall that sells contact lenses. Junior and his friends stopped at an outdoor bar for micheladas, which is a popular Mexican drink made with beer, lime juice, hot sauce, and other spices. The market closed at around 6 p.m., and the police officers came to ensure everyone left before it got dark, when the area was more dangerous. One man was very drunk and did not want the party to end, so he threw his michelada at the police officers, who then threw one back at him. They took the train back to Roma Norte. Mexico City's train system is remarkable because it uses symbols to identify train stations for those who are illiterate. A grasshopper, an eagle, a rattlesnake. Color-coded tiles run through the stations to help guide passengers who are transferring. Well, I was glad Junior made it back to Roma Norte in one piece. We were feeling hungry and went to a small restaurant for tacos. Junior said he could eat tacos al pastor every day. This dish actually has Middle Eastern origins, but made with Mexican spices. The meat is cooked using the shawarma technique, brought over to Mexico by Lebanese immigrants. I ordered tacos campechanos, which is flank steak, chorizo, and chicharrón. I rarely felt unsafe while living in Mexico City. But I also lived in a neighborhood that was very safe and only went to other safe neighborhoods, and I never walked alone at night. My Mexican friends were software engineers, financial consultants, and university students. Hearing Junior's tales about the other side of Mexico were surreal. There was one afternoon I was walking home from dance class, and a man followed me down the street insisting I go out to dinner with him. He was older, with gray hair and a mustache. I kept saying no thank you and increased my speed, but he kept following me. He must have lived in the neighborhood because the next day I was walking down a different street and he did the exact same thing without a hint of discouragement. While this was an irritating experience, I didn't feel unsafe. Later that afternoon, a new resident moved into my house. I lived in a shared house with 10 bedrooms. There was usually a new arrival every other month. Luciana was a beautiful doctor from Medellin, engaged to a Mexican business owner named Joaquin. I was surprised when he said he owned a milk tea shop, which was quite popular with young locals. They met in Puerto Escondido, a popular beach town in Oaxaca. Luciana was now working in a hospital downtown, while Joaquin spent most of the week outside of Mexico City where his business was located, and came into the city on weekends. It was clear he wanted to make sure she enjoyed her 2 months in his country, and made exciting plans for them every weekend. A music festival, a romantic trip to San Miguel de Allende, and of course, the endless array of restaurants, bars, and nightlife of Mexico City. Her favorite dish was tacos al hambre, which was beef and chorizo cooked with bell peppers, onions, and cheese. Mexico City is full of people in love. Every day, without fail, I'll see couples kissing in public. One time, I saw an entire line of people waiting for the bus, all of whom were paired off and kissing passionately. Another time, I was at an outdoor cafe and saw a young couple embrace as if they hadn't seen each other in a long time. The man was carrying a backpack, and I noticed scuba fins and a pair of goggles sticking out of the top. Maybe he worked as a dive master in Cancun while his girlfriend lived in Mexico City. And this was one of those precious weekends they saw each other during the course of their long-distance relationship. One day, I ran into Luciana on the street. She was having trouble finding a cafe and asked me for directions. I knew the cafe very well, since it had a bookstore attached, and told her I'd walk her there. She became flustered and said that wouldn't be necessary, but I insisted, since I was headed in that direction anyways. We arrived at the cafe entrance, and there was a tall, handsome man waiting at the door for Luciana, and he was definitely not Joaquin. She glanced at me with a nervous smile, thanked me for walking her over, and we said goodbye. I tried not to jump to conclusions. When her time in Mexico ended, Luciana went to Spain to work at a different hospital, and Joaquin flew out to visit her. 2 months later, she returned to Mexico City and they got married. I realized at the beginning of this 14-month journey through Latin America, I was unable to distinguish between the various Spanish accents, but after 5 months of living in a house with people from Argentina, Chile, Spain, Colombia, and Mexico, my ear gradually became attuned to the subtle nuances of the language. I just finished reading Candide by Voltaire. The story follows an optimistic young man who learns the harsh realities of life through a series of misfortunes. Even though he's free to roam the world, he's often at the mercy of circumstances beyond his control. He eventually concludes that focusing on practical actions is more beneficial than dwelling on philosophical ideals. I thought to myself, even though I met many people in my travels through Latin America, Asia, and other parts of the world, I never got to know many of them deeply. I only caught a glimpse of their lives and a fragment of their character in the hustle and bustle of our social lives. They were like shooting stars, dazzling for a moment before vanishing into the night. Yet I harbor no regrets. The inherent beauty of travel lies in its capacity to introduce us to people we might never encounter otherwise. It gives us the chance to expand our worldview in ways we may never have imagined. Also, I recall a friend of mine who lived in the same rent-controlled apartment in New York City for over 20 years. He still doesn't know the name of his neighbors, who've lived there for as long as he has. So, proximity alone does not guarantee meaningful relationships. It is the conscious choice to engage, to share stories, and to make the most of crossing paths. You never know who you'll meet next while traveling long-term. After 6 months in Mexico City, I moved to Medellin and met a wealthy Colombian man at a language exchange. Find out how it all unfolded in this video.